I said, what story do you want to tell?
Well, I want you to guess what story it is.
Okay, so you're gonna be tricky. All right, so Sam, there are a lot of stories out there. So is there anything you can say to kind of give us a hint?
Need a clue?
Yeah, you clue, right? So. Thinking about it?
Well, this is a Bible story.
Well, Sam, that's helpful, but the Bible's a big old thick book. Is there anything else you can just kind of say to help us out a little bit, you know?
Well, this is a story about a kid in the Bible with a really cool name.
A kid in the Bible with a cool name. That's actually a pretty good hint. Does anybody want to guess? A kid in the Bible with a pretty cool name. Anybody? Anybody else? Was it, did you say David? Was it David?
No.
Oh. Good guess. Great guess. Anybody else?
I knew you were deeper
I'm hearing. Yes,
Josiah.
was it Josiah? Oh, that's such a good. But what a great guess, though. My goodness. Anything else? Okay. Pardon?
Bingo.
Oh. She said Sam. Did you say Samuel?
Yeah, see, the first time that I heard the story of Samuel, the person that told it to me said that Samuel was a really good listener.
Okay.
So I thought that meant he had big ears, like Dumbo or like you.
Being a good listener is not about the size of your ears. It's about what you do once you hear something. What you do once you hear something.
Oh, you might be an obedient.
That's exactly right. My mom used to tell me that obedience is what you do when you're told without asking questions. And her dad told her that. And he looked it up in the dictionary, so they were working on some authority there. So yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Well, speaking of moms, Samuel's mom, her name was Hannah.
Okay.
And his dad's name was Elkanah.
Okay.
And before Samuel was born, Hannah didn't have any kids, but she really wanted to.
Okay.
So every year she would go to the temple and she would pray and cry and ask the Lord to give her a child. And you know what she told God?
What's that?
She said, Lord, if you give me a child, I'll give him right back to you. Well, how she don't do that? 747 to heaven?
Oh, come on, Sam. So what happened?
Well, one year in particular, Hannah went to the temple, and I don't mean to make fun, but she's in there talking to God.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bible said she looked a little bit,
She looked a little bit what?
she looked a little,
What do you mean by that?
she looked a little off.
Why do you say that?
Well, she's in there talking to God, and I think that maybe her eyes were closed, and I know that her mouth was moving, but you couldn't hear any noise. So she looked a little bit like this.
All right, well, that is our concern. I give you that. So what happened?
Well, Eli, he was the high priest. He came and saw her, and he said, this lady has some issues.
Yeah. So what happened?
Well, when he finally talked to her, he saw deeper. And he said, Hannah, you go home. God has heard your request.
Well, that's pretty cool. So Hannah had knowledge that God was listening to her, right? And then what happened?
Well, it wasn't too long later before Hannah found out that she's going to have a baby. And as these things usually go, she did.
She did. And she named him Samuel.
Well, duh.
All right, let's go. So what about her promise to God to give Samuel back to God?
Well, you know what she did? When Samuel got old enough, she just took him back to the temple and dropped him off.
We'll see. Let me just sort of edit that. So she did bring Samuel back to the temple when he got old enough. She brought him back. But she dropped him off, but she left him there with Eli, and every year. Sam forgot this part of the story. I have to help you out over here. Every year, Hannah would come to the temple, and she would bring Samuel, and you know this, man, She would bring Samuel
a piece of cheesecake.
well, not in my Bible. No, man, she'd bring like a cloak or a robe. She'd bring a garment of some kind.
Well, Lord knows we all need a good garment.
Not like a puppet?
So what happened there in the temple that was so important to the story?
Well, it was in the temple that Samuel showed that he learned how to be a good listener. See, one night he was lying in bed, probably starting to doze off a little bit, you know.
Sam, don't rush me, dude.
What did you think?
Well, all of a sudden, he heard this. Samuel. Well, he jumped out of bed, went running over to Eli. He said, I heard you. What did you need? And Eli said, I didn't call you. So that's what it is.
So he did?
Yeah, he did, but it wasn't too long later that Lord heard it. Samuel. Well, he jumped out of bed again, went running over to Eli. He said, I heard you this time. What did you need? And Eli said, I didn't call you this time either. Go back to bed. Bucko.
Sam, I keep interrupting you here, but probably most of us here know the story of Samuel. And have you ever thought, what would you have done? What would I have done? If you're trying to go to sleep and all of a sudden you hear someone call your name, and you think somebody's trying to play a joke on you, or nowadays you think someone left your cell phone on or something, Sam, maybe you thought it was his belly growling,
Eat a cheesecake.
Well, that wasn't an option either.
It's a cheesecake.
So what happened?
Well, he heard it again, y'all, but this time Eli caught on and he said, Samuel, when you hear that again, say, speak for your servant hears. And that's exactly what he did, because it wasn't somebody trying to play a joke and it wasn't his belly growling. It was God. And God had something very difficult for Samuel to do, in my estimation.
What was that?
Well, Eli had some wicked sons, but he didn't do anything to stop them. So God told Samuel to tell Eli that he was in big trouble.
And did he do it?
Yeah.
You know what, I think this is such an important story for all of us, but I do look at you kids and say, you know what, we don't know how old Samuel was. He might have been 8 or 10 or 12 or 59. But he was very young. But he was, willing to do something that would seem to be pretty hard. Why? Because God told him to, He was willing to be, what's the word, Sam? Obedient, absolutely, man. Sam, I'm so glad you shared that story. I think this is so important that we learn to walk in obedience to God no matter what He asks of us. We've got to do it, and we know it's going to be worth it in the end. So, Sam, I know you do have a song for us this morning. I know you would. I'll get you track of it. So.